Okay. Okay. I'll call the meeting to order. I'll begin with my regrets that we're a few minutes late starting. We've been in meetings since 2 o'clock nonstop, and some of the procedural issues had to be wrestled between the two meetings, and there was only about 6 minutes between the two meetings. We've worked those out, and so I'll call to order this public hearing. Good evening. This is a public hearing into the bylaws that will be introduced to you in a moment by the Deputy City Clerk. Council for the City of Coquitlam has given first reading to these bylaws and directed that they be referred to a public hearing. Staff from the City's Planning and Development Department will present a summary of each proposed bylaw, and then the floor will be open to anyone in the audience that wishes to present his or her views on the proposed bylaw. Those that have pre-registered will be given first opportunity to speak, and I've got a list. I stress to you all that this is a public hearing. It's an opportunity for anyone present to make his or her views known on the proposed bylaw to council members. We're here with an open mind to hear your input, to listen to your input. No one has prejudged the outcome of these applications, but there are some rules. It's not a question and answer period. It's not an opportunity to debate the merits of the proposed bylaw with either council members or with staff or those in the audience who might have a different point of view. So we ask everyone to please restrict your comments to the proposed bylaw, be as brief and concise as possible. We ask speakers to limit themselves to a 5-minute time limit in order that everyone who wishes to speak is able to do so. You're allowed to speak more than once, but if you've got some good stuff, please get to the end of the line and we'll hear you again. Be respectful in your submission and not make any personal comments. We also ask the audience be respectful of everyone else in the room, so we don't allow any booing, we don't allow any cheering for the same reason. We'll just respectfully listen to everyone's point of view. As chair of the hearing, I've been asked to conclude any presentation that does not relate to the bylaw, that becomes abusive or becomes repetitive of views that speaker has already made known to council members, but I never have to exercise any of those. Please note that if you wish to provide a written submission and you want it to be part of the permanent record of today's meeting, the permanent public record, you have to submit it to Ms. Lohr before the adjournment of that item. After the adjournment of an item, council can't receive any more information about that item until we've given it all 4 readings or not given it those 4 readings. Please note that immediately following the adjournment of the public hearing tonight, we'll have a regular council meeting in order that council can give considerations to items on the council agenda, but also on the items on tonight's public hearing agenda. However, if during the public hearing council requests further information or for whatever reason feels unable to make the decision tonight, we can defer those items pending receipt of the requested information. Please also note that for procedural reasons and to allow for renewed consultation, item 3, which is the regional context statement, has been pulled from this evening's public hearing agenda. It's not on the agenda tonight. Item 3, that's the regional context statement. It's anticipated that this bylaw will be brought back to the July 22nd public hearing. I assume some of you will get up and leave now. Item 3 is not on the agenda. Okay, you're all here for something else. I will now call on Ms. Lohr to introduce the bylaws on tonight's agenda and Planning and Development staff to make a presentation on the first item.
Thank you, Your Worship. Item 1 is an application to amend the city's zoning bylaw to rezone the property at 1388 Gabriola Drive from RS2 one-family suburban residential to RS3 one-family residential, RS4 one-family compact residential, and P5 special park. Bylaw number 4389.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This site of this rezoning application is generally to the west of Coquitlam River and east of Pipeline Road. David Avenue runs east-west through the northern portion of this property. The site is designated one-family residential, compact one-family residential, natural areas, and linear park under the official community plan. Zoning on the site and to the north is RS2 one-family suburban residential. Zoning to the west is RS4 one-family compact residential and RS3 one-family residential. To the south, the zoning is RS4 and P5 special park, and to the east, RS4 and RS5 one-family compact residential. The site contains undeveloped forested lands. The applicant is proposing to rezone the site in conformance with the official community plan to RS3, one-family residential, RS4, one-family compact residential, and P5 special park to facilitate a subdivision comprising 38 one-family residential lots and acquisition of land adjacent to the Coquitlam River for public park, environmental protection, and urban trails. Staff are recommending all final readings to rezoning bylaw number 4389, 2013. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The applicant's not speaking. Okay. Our first speaker tonight is Shelley Pilitjak. Shelley? Anybody named Shelley will come. No? No. If I've mispronounced the last name, my apologies. I'll go to Peter Hagen. Peter Hagen? Oh, you have to come right forward. Stand at this microphone right up front here. There's a little podium. Okay. And you'll state, actually your name is Peter Hagen, and you're at 3320 Caliente Place. And please proceed.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Peter Hagen. I'm at 3320 Caliente Place. And I'm just here to express my concerns over our little area of this subdivision, which is Caliente. We're concerned, as probably perhaps a number of residents are, over the loss of green space in this area. With respect to our street, in particular, we're concerned with increased traffic and resulting congestion. We have a narrow street as a result of previous development in the area. As we all are aware, I believe the Spragues have a concrete wall adjacent to that street. With the loss of the trees, we're concerned that there's a possibility for increased noise. We already face an onslaught of traffic coming down David Avenue and can hear that traffic well into the night as it reaches the upper end of the hill. We're concerned with our property values as the increased traffic and congestion and noise come to bear on that little area. Not to mention unresolved issues from the previous development, as I mentioned earlier. We have a very narrow street as it is, and the development in the area was allowed to proceed with this narrow street, and I think that presented an unfair situation for many of the residents on that street, and nevertheless we've become accustomed to it, but it's still something that I believe should be resolved before allowing any further development in the area. I don't understand why we would be proceeding with future development or proposed developments without resolving the issues that are a legacy issue from the previous development. Widen the street without taking out the sidewalk. You know, we found it a way to do that for David Avenue with the bridge. I believe you can find a way to do that for any further development in that area, or halt it. Have the power to do that. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Sam Brownlee.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sam Brownlee, and I live at 3322 Caliente Place, next door to Peter. Council was presented with a petition a while ago, about last month, signed by every resident of Caliente Place opposing this development. To be very clear about it, for those of you who have not been up to that area, the narrow street that Peter refers to is actually 14 feet wide. and it is abutted on the north side by an 8-foot concrete wall topped by wire. That concrete wall runs right up where the center line of the road should run, which means that what we have is the equivalent of a very narrow alley. It's a one-way street, it's one-way traffic. It relies very heavily on the goodwill of the neighbors who have been very stable and have been very cooperative over the years. When it snows, for example, I can't even get my car out of my driveway because it won't go up the hill. And we're talking about adding 3 more houses around the corner from my house, further down the hill. It makes absolutely no sense. On top of that, we have the issue of the last remaining bit of forest on that side of the street and all the things that go on in a forest, you know, the deer and so on and so forth. Let's not get into that. Nobody seems to care about animals these days. But that last bit of forest does create a certain amount of a buffer for some of the traffic noise. I work from home. My home office is on the 2nd floor of my house. This time of year, I have to work with my office window closed because the traffic of people climbing that hill is so loud, I might as well be living in the middle of Granville Street downtown. It's ridiculous. That particular little corner of land, we would like to see, and we are here to ask you, that that particular corner of land be designated as green space until such time as the issue of the road is resolved. This council has dealt with this issue a number of times with this narrow road, and it always seems to come down to a point where council falls on the side of someone other than the people who live on the street and pay the taxes. And we are asking you this time to please think of the people who live here, the people who've been living here. Most of us have been on that street for 20-plus years, rather than a developer who wants to come in and make a profit. We would also ask you very carefully to consider the fact that this developer has contributed to the campaigns of every single person on this council. And I personally would ask you how you can be perfectly objective under those circumstances in voting on whether or not to pass this motion. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Next speaker will be Nicola Shu. Nicola.
Hi, my name is Nicola Shu, and I reside at 1422 Gabriola Drive. I'm a bit nervous. This is the first time I've ever done anything like this. I did send the email, so I'm just going to read out the parts that I think are pertinent. I just am concerned with this approximate 38 units. To me, that means there could be more. I understand they could also be suitable, which means there would be potentially way more than 38 families. We've lived in the area for over 20 years and brought up our 2 boys there, and we're really concerned about what this will do to the area. There's a number of my neighbors here also that do live on Gabriola Drive, and we really do enjoy a great family community, and we're worried about the impact that having these extra units will have on our neighborhood. The other issue is the intersection of Pipeline Road and Gabriola Drive and the entrance to what I believe is Lot B of the Coquitlam Town Center Sports Complex. This intersection is it's a challenge for many of us. We've taken to going out through Dunkirk Road now to turn left because you just can't make your left-hand turn anymore. And I do see in the literature that was left for us today that there is a plan for some kind of lights to go in there. But I have 2 boys who cross that street every day, either to go to Douglas College, David Lamb, or to Pine Tree High School. And even in the wintertime also, it's very dangerous to cross that pedestrian crosswalk. I have a son that plays field lacrosse, and when he's going back and forth at night during the rain, I really do worry about him with no lights there. And that's basically, all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Reid.
Yes, could we please put attachment 3 up, which shows the actual subdivision layout, the SPIA layout, the road layout, which would make a lot more sense, Your Worship.
Can that landscape, please?
Sorry, it's going to take the long way around. There we go.
And I have a couple of questions, Your Worship, right now.
Go ahead.
I want to talk about Caliente Place, and I have spoken to this before. I think, Mr. McIntyre, you had mentioned that this developer was going to widen the road, but they can't take out the sidewalks in front of the people's houses. So how is that going to happen?
Your Worship,
Mr. Aloya.
yes, we are well aware of the situation on Caliente Place. In preliminary discussions with the developer, as well as after receiving lots of feedback from residents on Caliente Place, we did have further discussions with the developer around what options may be available to the city to try and assist the owners on Caliente Place to have a wider drive area, so essentially a wider road. But the option presented to them essentially was something that we only felt could be considered by the owners. It wasn't intended to direct a solution by the developer. It was simply trying to find options. So if the owners of those properties, I think there's 5 or 6 properties, if they were if they felt it was more important for them to have a wider area to drive on rather than the sidewalk, the developer would be prepared. If the owners were prepared to replace, essentially to expand the road and move the curb to expand the driving area, but that was only an option. Essentially that involves building road within what's currently a boulevard area on the road allowance on the property owners. There is no opportunity to expand the road north. The road north at this point is private property. There is a wall built on that space, as everybody knows, and there is no opportunity to expand the road north. So we felt only as an option. It was not intended to force a solution on the owners of those properties. It was simply intended to explore what avenues there might be if the owners felt that was an appropriate trade-off.
Okay, and the second question, I thought I'd try and clear these 2 up first. Several people in all the literature I've got here have mentioned about the 5% park dedication as thinking that was the whole park dedication. Could you please explain? I guess it's on my map, it's in dark green. On yours, it's in kind of turquoise.
Yes.
Voluntary additional park, it's over the 5%.
Yes, correct. So in terms of the total amount of open space intended to be acquired by the city, there is about 12 acres of property fully on this site. Around 6.25 acres are intended to be acquired by the city as parkland. The majority of that is going to be dedicated at no cost to the city, and it represents either lands that are environmentally sensitive under the river and under the top of bank, as well as land that is required to be dedicated to the city as part of a subdivision, a total amount of 5%. 5% is the maximum the city can get under the Local Government Act. In addition to that, the developer is actually proposing to dedicate an extra 0.42 of an acre, just as part of his package. The rest of the land, which is around 1.92 acres, is being purchased by the city as per the official community plan, which does show open space on this site. So generally, the majority of the open space on this site is being obtained by the city at no cost or as part of the 5%. And that's a total of about 6.25 acres of property.
Okay, and these lands have been in the OCP as designated as housing since when?
Well, the property is designated the one family residential. I can't recall, but certainly
The 1990s.
decades. Yes.
1980 something.
And there's no open space designation, with the exception of the land shown as open space on the proposed plan. The rest is one-family residential intended for single-family subdivision.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Hodge.
Yeah, just a couple questions on the access to Gabriola, because my sister lives in there, so I'm in and out of there quite a bit. So I recognize that that there have been some concerns raised on that intersection, and I guess the concerns I'm reading through the emails may be the increase in traffic. And I noticed that there was some suggestions that there may be some ways to work on that. I wonder if you could just elaborate on what we could possibly do with that intersection and what the timing could be on that.
If I could just have the clerk perhaps put up the drawing or the sketch that we identified. Public hearing brief, please. Oh. That's the one. Perfect. Thank you. So this is just a sketch we provided council just to try and provide a little bit more detail on that intersection. We are certainly aware of the backup of traffic on Gabriola as it reaches Pipeline, and it is a four-legged intersection. The city's capital plan, covered by development cost charges, does include a pedestrian-activated signal. That is, we are currently working with the Engineering and Public Works, and the goal is to try to advance that project in a timing that is coordinated with the timing of this possible development. We're council to approve the development. The goal would be to have that signal coordinated with the development or in advance of the development. This would be a pedestrian-activated signal, so the flashing green light. It would also have sensors, either video sensors or actual loop detectors that would sense traffic backup on either leg of Gabriola to then change and provide a way to clear the traffic. So this is the there is some additional study going on at this moment. Obviously, the other components of this is the completion of Gabriola, which currently is disconnected. So that collector road would be completed as well, and the pavements and full road construction would be completed across those connections as well.
Okay, so it's in the long-term plan, but if this subdivision were to be approved, then we would move it up so that it could be done in conjunction with that, so that we wouldn't see people moving in and then the delays and something, so we'd be able to do it at the same time. Good. And also, would that also then work in the opposite direction? I'm thinking for people coming out of the park entry, would that be signaled over there as well?
Yes, Your Worship. That would cover both sides of the, so both the east and west legs of Gabriola, or the town center driveway. That would also have signalization on both sides with sensors, so that if there's a backup from the park, that would also pick up the sensor and clear the intersection.
Good. And you touched on one there, which is, I guess, if this is approved, Gabriola will now connect with, I guess I call Gabriola West and Gabriola East. And that does complete a route that, you know, I've of course known about that for years because I'm familiar with the area. But I'm just wondering, it does open it up to through traffic. I suspect it may take some of the traffic off of Nestor because there's an alternate road down. But has there been any road designed in there, any sort of form of traffic calming, you know, traffic mitigation just up in the new area, or just wondering if you can elaborate on anything up in that area?
Yes. Generally, when we connect a road like this, and this is actually a collector road in the official community plan, it does show it is a collector system, so it's not just a localized system. This collector road will connect the two separate areas of Gabriola. The expectation is that there would be an overall benefit to traffic dispersal, so it would alleviate traffic that might currently run through different routes at this time because they don't have that option. And that takes a little bit of time to realize, but that's our experience in connecting these important connections. That road, as a collector road, it is designated in the OCP as a collector road. We are, the developer has looked at a design that matches our collector standard, which is 11-meter pavement on a essentially what would otherwise be an 18 to 20 meter road allowance. So it's an 11 meter pavement, boulevards, street trees. We have shown a number of traffic calming, primarily bulges at intersections to reduce traffic or pedestrian crossing distances. But that's preliminary, and that's something that the city will be working with the developer and our traffic operations to try and determine what appropriate design for that road cross section. But currently, the conceptual plan does meet our official community plan in terms of that road cross section.
Good, thank you. And actually, just maybe think of one other question. You mentioned the width of the road. There is one little section, it's across from the corner store in there, which is, I guess, by where the part where the trail comes out. So that would be widened out, so we're not going to see a little piece missing. That's correct. I think we discussed this at first reading. I just want to make sure I've got that clear.
Yes, I should point that out as well. There's two connections right now, essentially across the current park areas at the ends of Gabriola. Those sections are across City Park, city land, and those are currently at a half road standard with gravel shoulders, etc. Both those sections, and those are over 100 meters worth of frontage, are going to be built by the developer under this development. Okay. So they will finish those connections and finish all of the road edges from either side of Gabriola to a full finish standard.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm back to attachment 3, but I don't think you need to bother moving it. I'm looking at the park dedication. So we have the 5% required to be contributed, an additional voluntary contribution, and then a substantial amount of park to be acquired. And it's all described in the legend on the drawing as park dedication, and I wanted to, first of all, confirm that that is in fact what's meant, and then ask you to confirm for me the significance of dedication as a park in terms of potential future use.
Yes, that's a very interesting nuance raised by Councillor Nicholson. The park dedication, when it's shown as park dedication on a legal plan, essentially it's an untitled piece of property. It cannot be divested by the city without petition of the public. All of 5%, all of the land that is required to be dedicated by the city or by a developer as part of a subdivision must be dedicated as dedicated park. That's the 5%. We certainly have no issue, and I think the intent was to dedicate all the land, or as much as possible, to the city through a dedication process. That, I believe, is the intent, and that's, I think, the developer's intent as well. We hadn't gone to the nuance of whether we would obtain other portions of that parkland as titled land, but we could certainly look at that being entirely dedicated to give certainly the public certainty of ultimate park use in the future.
It's, as I understand it, about the highest level of protection that we can afford to parkland.
It is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I have Ian MacArthur.
My name is Ian MacArthur. I live at 940 Stanton Avenue. And I thank the Mayor and Council for the opportunity to speak today. I'm here on behalf of the Burke Mountain Naturalists and Coquitlam River Watch. I'm representing 280 members between the two groups. Let me start by saying we had hoped that this property would have stayed in a natural state or as a passive parkland. When I sat on the Environment Committee, the Coquitlam Environment Committee, between 1999 and 2003, we had the Coquitlam River Corridor Strategy approved by Council in May of 2000. During the discussions of this strategy in 1999, we talked about the possibility of the city purchasing land along the Coquitlam River. During these discussions, I mentioned the property that is being proposed for development today, and I was told by city staff that there were already, or there had already been discussions with the owners about donating most of the property as parkland. Longtime neighbors and friends of the owners were told by the owners that there were plans for them to donate the land as parkland as well. We understand this never came to a legal agreement, and I urge the city not to let opportunities like this pass by in the future. If this property is not protected from development, we would like to see the storm sewer outlet from Westwood Plateau that runs on the south side of the property be daylighted. This is the present location of the Trans-Canada Trail. We would like it to be daylighted from the west end of Gabriola Drive to the Coquitlam River, which is a distance of approximately 350 meters. It is approximately 22 meters wide, so there's plenty of room to fit a stream and a trail beside it. With your appropriate plantings along the stream, the two big problems with the storm sewers, the poor water quality and the rapid changes in water level could be solved. During construction would be the ideal time to work on this. Although we'd like to see the daylighted stream to be 350 meters, it would still be beneficial to the health of the environment if a smaller portion of the stream was daylighted. Infinity Properties states in their proposal that a minor filling will need to occur, and I think they've greatly underestimated the amount of fill that will be needed to bring the portion of the property near the east end of Gabriola above the floodplain. It looks like it would be approximately 4 to 5 meters, or 4 or 5 meter drop from the old house site to the river. We also think fill will have an impact on the riparian setback. There is also another 2 to 3 meter drop on the west side of the property that we don't know if fill will be needed on that portion. We believe the riparian setback is too narrow, as some of the trees presently in the riparian area of the development side will be cut down for safety reasons, being too close to homes. This will either occur during development or once homeowners see that these large trees are so close to their homes. We agree with the residents of Caliente Place that this portion of the land on the north side of the property should not be developed and should be left as green space. If this portion is developed, we'd like to see a pedestrian pathway connecting Caliente Place to David Avenue. If possible, we would like to see a pedestrian pathway go under David Avenue Bridge on the west side of the Coquitlam River between the bridge and Hockaday Creek, connecting the proposed trail along the east side of the property. We also believe that before any alignment of trails are developed, local residents should be given an opportunity to be a part of the planning. And I just wanted to state that, this is a lovely parcel of land with all kind of wildlife in it. Barred owls were spotted not too long ago on the property, so it is a very important piece of property. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go right back to Shelley Belitiak, if she's here, and if she's not, we'll open the floor. I know she did. I know she did, but she did register to speak, and I wanted to give her the last chance. Okay, are there any other speakers to this item? I bet you there are. Please step forward, sir. State your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Your Worship, and members of Council. My name is Quentin Bolton, and I am a Development Manager for Infinity Properties and the owner's representative. I'd like to touch on some of the issues that were raised at tonight's public hearing and just bring about some clarity on how we've addressed some of those issues. First of all, can I turn this?
Can we activate the overhead, please?
Thanks very much. Thank you. So just for clarity, we're dealing with 38 proposed lots, 35 of which are located at Gabriola and 3 at Caliente Place. The 3 lots at Caliente Place, the proposed rezoning would be RS3, one family residential, as per the OCP, and the 35 lots off of Gabriola Drive would be RS4, compact, one family, as proposed, or as noted in the OCP. The total amount of parkland, which will absolutely be dedicated as park as part of this process, in conjunction working with staff, we estimate roughly 52% of the site is being either dedicated and or purchased by the city as park. That effectively almost doubles the riparian setback. By bylaw, we're required to give a 30-meter setback under simplified RAR, which is the riparian areas regulation, and also under the zoning bylaw. In some areas here, I'll just note on the map, we go from 55 meters to 60 meters to high water mark. It is the intent that this park will be left in its natural state. Any hazard trees we would deal with at construction, and they would be topped at 2/3 height. But the idea would be to try and save every tree that we could along that park edge that wasn't hazardous to future development. Now, with regards to the traffic calming measures, we're continuing to work with staff on that, and I've got another plan I could show you that's conceptual. As part of the collector, we wanted to address the issues of speeding. That was one issue that we heard loud and clear early on. And one of the ideas that we're working with staff on is to incorporate traffic bulges, which will basically narrow the pavement and cause people to slow down. The other ideas that we're floating around through talks with the design review is to talk about reduced traffic speed and the construction of an enhanced crosswalk here at the Trans-Canada Trail, where it would be raised and would cause the traffic to slow down even further. With regards to Caliente, we're absolutely committed to providing some noise attenuation there, and we are proposing at our cost to extend the concrete fences on both sides of David Avenue within the city right-of-way at the developer's cost. So it is our hope that that will further alleviate some of the noise concerns. And the last issue on Caliente is, from day one, we've proposed a permanent turnaround right here. And that will give cars the ability to do a 3-point turn, and rather than just completely back out. So once again, thanks very much for your opportunity to speak.
Okay, just before you leave, Councillor Sikora has...
Yes, thank you very much. I notice you have quite a bit of different lot sizes. What is the biggest lot size? What is the smallest one on there?
The biggest lot size would be somewhere in the range of, I believe it's 650 square meters, or about 7,000 square foot lot. For some of the, yes, correct, 689 off Caliente. And in the zoning for Caliente, the minimum lot size is 555 square meters, or just under 6,000 square feet. On both sides, we've tried to give a good lot size so that we can allow for a good house design and ultimately make for a better streetscape.
Okay, so what size homes would you build on these lots? Give me the square footage from the smallest to the largest.
They would be very similar to what's on Burke Mountain right now. So there would be anywhere from 2,800 to 3,500, somewhere in that range.
And would they have basements in them?
Yes, they would.
So they could have possibly suites in them?
Yes.
Okay. Now, these bulges that you showed earlier, can two cars pass each other with those bulges on the side of the road, on each side of the road?
Yes, there's about 9 meters, well, 8.5 meters to 9 meters of pavement in between the bulge where they pinch. So in, like, for example, this section here, it's about 8.5 meters to 9 meters.
So it leaves 2 full lanes.
Yes, 2 full lanes.
So where the bulges are, go a little further down, and where the bulges are, can two cars pass each other? Right on either side where there's bulges on both sides?
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Thanks.
2 full lanes there. Okay, Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple of points. In the staff report, having turn, this is for you, Mr. Bolton, or maybe for staff. It says specific measures to protect the SPIA have been identified, will be outlined in a watercourse protection DP to be processed by staff should the rezoning be approved. I would actually like to know what kind of protection we're going to provide for the SPIA as I consider the rezoning application, rather than looking at it later. And so presumably you've been talking to each other about this, so I could hear from anybody.
Yes, I'd like to defer to staff on this.
Yes, Your Worship. Environmental development permit areas like this, they go through a review process with our environmental staff, and that's coordinated through the subdivision approval process as well. Typically, there's a qualified professional who outlines specific measures depending on the protected stream protection areas and enhancement and protection areas that are designated for retention. There's specific fencing put up. There's signage for protected areas. There's also management of root zones for trees within the protected areas. So there's a whole host of requirements outlined in that development permit that it follows our standard requirements with the environmental agencies. But that's primarily managing the areas that are retained for environmental purposes, as well as the edges on private property. In this case, it would be park areas, to ensure that trees are protected and that habitats for environmental areas are protected as part of the dedication.
Okay, thank you. And then I just wanted to confirm, the SPEA is an area that can't be used, right?
Correct. Once identified as a SPIA, or as a stream protection and enhancement area under the Fisheries Act, it is protected. It is there's no public access into those areas. They are left as an environmental protection area with full environmental activities in that space, and entirely habitat and wildlife, et cetera, in perpetuity.
Okay, so on attachment 3, where we talk about 52% is described as total park, but in fact a significant part of that is park in terms of beauty, but not in terms of usefulness. The accessible park is somewhere around 24% of the total.
Yes, that is correct. And the areas that are actually dedicated as, by the developer as SPIA are being dedicated at no cost to the city.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Asmundson. Sorry. Okay. Councillor Asmundson sits here. Councillor O'Neill sits over there, but he felt lonely. So, Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson.
Clear his button. There we go. You have to reactivate, sorry.
Thank you. This is for Mr. Bolden here. I'm wondering if you could walk us through how this project development, how this proposed development has changed as a result of your communication and interaction with the community and with the city. Have there been several iterations of this? I know you did talk about the traffic calming measures, and we heard about the crosswalk and things like that. Are there any others? And I'm not sure if exactly if this has always been the park dedication from the start, or this has grown in response to concerns, if the number of lots has decreased or increased. What are the various iterations of this? Can you walk us through that?
Sure, absolutely. When we first purchased the property just over 2 years ago, this was not the original layout, and you are correct. Originally, when we purchased the property, we had much fewer parklands proposed. As a result, we had to ascertain what the city's desire was for parkland and what the community's desire for parkland was. Originally, we did show lots backing on to the 30-meter setback, but it was because of the community consultation and the importance of maintaining that corridor is green space that we've amended the proposal to the proposal that you see before you today.
So how many lots less are there now than there were before?
Originally, there was 51, and then it went down roughly by another 10, I believe, to 41. And now we're down to 38.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Hodge.
Yes, and this is a question for staff. I'm just looking at the SPIA area here, and I've spent a fair bit of time walking down there, and the trail actually from here sort of follows the river south, and so we have a strip of green between the existing Gabriola and the river, and that dates back quite a ways before we actually had the SPIA and all of that. Is the land south of here dedicated SPIA and park? Does that SPIA continue along the full river? Because I don't recall it being actually fenced off. Is it just dedicated separate? I'm just wondering, is this a continuation of what we already have, or is this going to be a split designation north of the hydro right-of-way? Or the pipe right-of-way?
Your Worship.
Mr. McIntyre.
Yeah, a very good question. The lands to the south would have been brought under the city's control many, many years ago, back before the time a SPIA probably was identified.
Right.
As for the status, I believe a part of it is park. I do know there's some fishery enhancement and habitat works down there that have been funded over the years that have taken place in that. But I don't believe there's, certainly not an RAR SPIA has been identified. But the area is protected, I think, in park and through an open space designation in the official community plan. And I imagine in the zoning bylaws a P1 zone over those lands as well.
So this would actually have a higher level of protection along the river. And I'm just thinking up in this area here, when I walked down in there with my kids, there's like a little sandbar. I refer to it as the beach down in there. So, but that would now actually fall within a protected area. Is that correct?
I think that's what you'd experience if this project was to go ahead. I'm quite familiar with that section of trail south there down to the footbridge too. You might describe that as a little less formal and controlled as you go down the trail. It does get close to the beach and you walk out in the sandbar. This area here, because of the SPIA, and as Raul explained around the qualified environmental professional doing their assessment, they look at that SPIA to confirm its width, and then what additional measures are necessary to protect and secure that area, up to including fencing. So it is a higher standard, I think, than what was applied previously to the lands to the south.
And that was my next question, because down below there isn't fencing, but I guess that's a fisheries decision, but we could actually see fencing to protect that and to split it off from the trail, because I see our trails are now being built up into the park area, but not in the SPIA. But it's not uncommon up on Brook Mountain to sort of see areas where it's either fencing or wood fencing or logs or something. So this portion could be separated off.
And that's correct, Your Worship. In fact, it was a very conscious decision to do that, acknowledging that the SPIA would be identified and likely at a 30-meter with those additional measures. Then what else is necessary through there? It is identified in the official community plan for open space, but so how do you carry forward that, or a continuation of that trail system on the south, which is absolutely beautiful and very popular? How do you connect that up, the missing link up to David Avenue, to do it safely, to provide an enjoyable, open space park experience, but also provide some privacy and setback security for the residents along there. So I think this is the compromise that was arrived at between Raul and his staff and the proponent.
Thank you.
I had a similar question on the east side of the river. The trail that's close to that runs north-south near the end of McClellan Drive, it cuts through an area portion called SPIA. Now that's an existing trail, and actually there's some existing trails on the west side of the river as well that I gather would be there'd be an effort made to discontinue them. In fact, all of the Poco Trail is built on SPIA lands. To what extent do we try to recover that in the course of the development of a site like this?
Your Worship, the main issue is obviously having public control over those lands. So the first thing is obtaining control of those properties through this application. Then there would be a reconciliation of the existing trail and where can it be pulled back away from the SPIA. We would do that. We'd work with the developer. On the east side, it's a little bit less traveled, as you're probably familiar. It's also a very beautiful spot, just as informal. And there'd be some work done to try and see how far we can move the trail out of that bottom part of the SPIA up into the area shown in green, which is outside the SPIA. But we've talked to the developer as well as our Parks and Recreation Department, and that's something that they would be looking at over time. It isn't something they will do in the immediate term. It's an area that's typically less traveled. The goal here would be to obtain those properties and then try and determine the best way to provide public access without impacting the SPIA on the lower part.
Okay. Got Councillor O'Neill.
Yeah, just a little bit of information. I'm on this trail quite a bit.
Oh, sorry.
Just a second. No, don't. Okay, leave it there. Don't touch. Okay. The clerk will activate it in a moment. There you go. You're right. Okay.
Yes, I'm on the trail quite a bit on the west side of the river, and I usually enter off the Ozata Park and then either go south or north. But going south on the west side of the Coquitlam River, the city has actually, I think last year and a half ago, put on some protective fencing, not between the path and the Coquitlam River, but to the west of the trail as you're going south to protect sensitive area that's to the west. So there's already lots of work done there. It's between Ozata and the Patricia Avenue pedestrian bridge. There's actually been a lot of work done there by the city of Coquitlam, I remember last year, to protect the sensitive area, still allowing access to the river though, because the sensitive area actually is on the west side of the trail and in that area.
That's some of the fisheries installations that
yeah, that's right. Anyway, just
and in fact, some of that work included tight-knit fencing to stop animals, the off-leash dog on a park that isn't dog off-leash, but the off-leash dogs that attack the river. So,
thank you. That's all. Just wanted to share that.
Okay, I've got Councillor Sikora.
Thank you very much. On these residents that you have, when you quoted the square footage for me, did you include the basement suites in that square footage?
Yes.
How many parking spaces will you have per unit?
I'll show you the plan that shows the bulges. It'll actually show parking as well on street.
Okay.
So I don't want to know about the parking on the street. I want to know on each residence how many parking spaces you're going to have.
On each of the lot, residents would have the ability to park 4 vehicles, 2 in the garage and 2 on the driveway. We will ensure that there's 6 meters from the garage face to the back of the sidewalk to allow for that.
Thank you.
Okay. That's it for you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers to this item? Here comes one.
Hi there, my name is Paul Allen. I live on 1429 Gabriola Drive. My concern with the development, I understand it's going to proceed anyway, probably, but my main concern is the construction traffic. My understanding is it's coming straight down Gabriola Drive, the 1400 block. We do have several residences that have their cars parked on the street, and my concern is will that parking be eliminated? Furthermore, the debris left by the construction transportation vehicles and whatnot on the street could cause damage to resident vehicles. Would there be any way of City Council to propose to the developer to have, say, a right turn in, right turn out off of David Street into the development site? The other reason for this is there is an elementary school off of Nestor where obviously we have children that go to that school, play in the area, especially after school, on weekends and whatnot. And my concern is for the safety of the kids as well as the residences in that neighborhood. Now, that's basically all I have to say with that, but I sincerely think we should have some other form of entry and exit, and also, too, that could allow traffic in that neighborhood to go in and out off of David Street rather than coming all the way up to Gabriola Drive.
So you're proposing a permanent?
Either a permanent or eventually like off of Pipeline down towards Lougheed Highway there, where the new development at the end of Pipeline, where it turns to Lincoln, there are cement barriers blocking it off, so that traffic can't go through there anymore.
Okay. But so, at the very least, a construction access.
Pardon?
A construction access.
Yes, please, and construction access there rather than taking it down Gabriola Drive. There is also a rather, well, not treacherous, but it is kind of a tricky S-turn coming down there, and having a, say, a dump truck with a trailer on the back end trying to navigate that turn when there's traffic coming back, say, at 9 o'clock from parents taking kids to school and whatnot. There could be maybe some trouble involved with that. So that's my suggestion, if council could bring that up to the developer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other speakers to this item? Please.
Yeah, Jeff Rudd, 1328 Gabriola Drive, just right at the corner on the east branch of Gabriola. So I've lived in that area I moved in there 4 years ago, and one of the main attractions of moving to that area was its proximity to the river and the large amount of green space, including the area which will now be developed. I think it's a tragedy that the city did not acquire that property. Given the amount of development that's gone in the neighborhood city center area, the density has increased phenomenally in the last 30 years since when New Horizons first went in the early 80s. And I'd like to echo Ian MacArthur's sentiment that the city should not let this kind of thing happen again. Land like this is very precious, and we'll never get it back. Having said that, I'm pleased that the plan as it exists now is much better than the original plan presented by the developer. That's a good thing. We're going to be losing a lot of habitat there for birds and other animals. I think Ian MacArthur's suggestion of daylighting the storm sewer would be a partial compensation for that, and I urge the city to look at that very seriously. I think it would be a wonderful opportunity for residents, for the kids at Nestor School to get involved with environmental things such as that. I think it would be a great idea. As far as protecting the beach from public access, I don't think there's any hope of that. That's one of the premier drinking spots on the river, and police are called out on a regular basis once or twice a week in the summer at least. So great efforts will have to be made to protect that if it's desired to fence that area off. That's basically all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other speakers to this item? Any others? Please come forward.
Just wanted to just respond and maybe add an additional comment to the issue of suites. It's Peter Hagan, 3320 Caliente. I think Mr. Bolton mentioned that the plan is to have suites in some of these properties. And, you know, I think without the suites, we'd be increasing traffic on our street by about 60%. With suites, that would easily be double the traffic on our street. And being as it is a narrow street, I think that's a much bigger concern for us. The access, I would find it interesting how the required access for secondary suites and parking, off-street parking, and the requirement for suite parking and resident parking, the primary residents to pass each other while the cars are in the driveway. I find that would be rather difficult. I'm curious how that would occur. Nevertheless, that would be a big concern for us, those suites on that property. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other speakers to this item? Any other speakers to this item? Third and final time, are there any other speakers to this item? Seeing none, I'll declare this item closed.
Item 2 is an application to amend the city's official community plan to incorporate the Partington Creek Neighbourhood Plan and Development Permit Area Guidelines into the city's OCP and make minor corresponding amendments to the Northeast Coquitlam Area Plan, Bylaw number 4391, 2013.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. I'll provide a brief overview of Bylaw number 4391, 2013 that is being presented at tonight's public hearing, which, if adopted by Council, will incorporate the Partington Creek Neighbourhood Plan and Development Permit Guidelines into the city's official community plan, as well as make minor corresponding amendments to the city's Northeast Coquitlam Area Plan. In tonight's presentation, I'll briefly recap key plan features and plan process, outcomes of the public consultation, follow up on Council discussion items from the May 27th meetings, and also briefly touch on the role of the Partington Creek Servicing Assessment as a companion document to the plan. Now, the Partington Creek Neighbourhood Plan is envisioned to become the heart of Burke Mountain. It's a 240-hectare plan area. It's a significant growth area in the city. Plan is there to guide new development. Could be in the range of 10 to 15,000 new residents going to be living in the plan area over the next 25 years. And it's also envisioned to become the commercial and recreational hub for Northeast Coquitlam. And it's set within a unique mountainside context that's informed plan policies. So key features include a generalized, flexible land use plan. It makes it more adaptable to changing housing market conditions and hopefully reduce the amount of OCP amendments. It includes more multifamily housing relative to other Burke Mountain plans, and it's envisioned to be a transit-supportive community. It's important to have the densities and mixed uses and pedestrian-friendly development to ensure that we get good transit service there at the outset and more frequent service as the neighborhood densifies. Now, the policies also respond to the sloping conditions of the site. Again, the unique hillside condition, many water courses also. And the parks, the approach to the provision of parks in the plan complements existing parks that surround the Partington Creek area. And in terms of transportation, there is a more robust street network, parking and access approaches, again, relative to previous plans. Now, I'll just touch on the recent process. To plan, the Partington Creek Plan has been underway since 2006, but more recently, a draft plan was brought to Council and Committee in December of last year, and that kicked off the final phase of public consultation. And so we went out to the Neighbourhood Working Group, the Northeast Coquitlam Ratepayers, the Urban Development Institute. There was also 2 open houses, one on February 19th at Victoria Hall. I think we had over 200 people attend that. We also had one on February 21st at Douglas College. We also discussed bear management policies with the Sustainability Environmental Advisory Committee, visited with the Coquitlam Youth Council, and also had meetings with stakeholders, property owners in the area. So based on the feedback we got from consultation, we updated the plan and brought the proposed plan back to Council Committee on May 13th and brought the OCP amendment bylaw to Council on May 27th, where it received first reading. Okay, so in terms of the outcomes from consultation, the overall feedback indicates general support for the plan. We've also made plan updates in response to consultation feedback. We refined the suburban residential policies in the plan, basically allowing the opportunity if a developer can prove out that there's additional density opportunities that an OCP amendment can be brought forward in the future. We've also reconfigured park space in the Partington Creek Plan, including reconfiguring Star Creek Park, adding additional park space to David Avenue Park, and allocating additional park space to the neighborhood center. We've also done a modest expansion of the town housing area, land use designation in Baycrest, strengthened bear management policy, clarified sloping site policies, and made some minor technical adjustments. Now, I just have a couple items I'd like to speak to in response to items that were raised during council discussion on May 27th. There was a question, or there was a desire expressed by council to see more Green Street type development in Partington if possible. And what staff are going to do, we're going to report back to council on the Green Street pilot project that has, there's Green Street been developed on Watkins Avenue in the Upper Hyde neighborhood, a very successful project. We'd like to report back to council on the outcomes, the lessons learned from that, and what kind of recommendations we can bring forward to have green streets in other areas in the Northeast. I'd also like to highlight that in the plan itself, under Section 3.5, the open space policies, that does support opportunities for green streets through achieving additional open space land use designations through new developments and subdivision. The town housing zone also requires minimum amenity space on a per unit basis, so that can be shaped and consolidated in a way to create green street-like spaces within stratus. We're also going to be looking for opportunities for green streets in the neighborhood center as that planning process gets underway. As a part of our update to the development permit guidelines, we're also going to be adding language to improve guidance for those types of features, green street features. And in the interim, staff are going to encourage applicants, where appropriate, to see if green streets can be pursued in various parts of the plan. A question was also raised, is there an ability to have stacked townhouses in the plan area? And those are basically where you have two townhouse units stacked on top of each other. Our current zones, there's a limitation there. The current zones don't allow that. The two zones that are allowed under the townhousing land use in the plan, one of which only allows a 2-story height. The other one requires a row home form where units have to be beside each other. They can't be on top of each other. But that being said, with the neighborhood center planning that will be getting underway there, we're going to look for opportunities for stacked townhouses there. And we may explore future amendments to townhouse zones to allow that stacked townhouse form. There was also a desire expressed to really emphasize a need for accessible, adaptable housing. And this is something that the Universal Accessibility Advisory Committee, chaired by Councillor Asmundson, will be looking at further, and the outcomes of that will be reported back to Council. Now, there's also a question raised, the park provision in the plan area. Does that provide adequate coverage? Is every resident within the plan area within a 10-minute walk of a park? And I'm just going to use a graphic here. These are showing all the parks in the Partington Creek area, the proposed parks. So basically, a 400-meter radius is about a 5-meter walk, and an 800-meter radius is about a 10-minute walk. But given that Partington Creek, about 3/4 of the area is over 10% slope, we actually used a 400-meter radius to show a 10-minute walk, to be realistic. And this, we put a buffer around all the parks, so everything in gray there shows basically the entire plan area is covered by a 5-minute or 400-meter walk, about 400-meter radius, about a 10-minute walk, except for that, my laser picks it up just in the upper left-hand corner, but those areas that aren't covered are probably within 420 meters, so it's very close.
And it'd be less than 5 minutes on the way down.
Right, yeah. Yeah, there's always going back up, correct. This also shows in the solid black line a citywide greenway. The dashed black lines show pedestrian connections, just sort of tying it all together, the parks, the pedestrian connections, and the future potential school sites.
Before you change slides, Councillor Reid has a question.
How many, Knoll Park I know definitely isn't flat, and I know Fremont isn't flat. How many of these are flat that we can actually do some park-like things on them?
Yes, very good question. The parks that have relatively flat area include David Avenue Park, Star Creek Park, Mitchell Street Park will have flatter areas, as will Baycrest Avenue Park. There may be, it depends on how the park space is allocated and developed in the neighborhood center. Those may also be relatively flat.
But none of these are going to be big enough to put a sports field on, correct?
That's correct.
So they're just going to be little passive parks for a swing set? And
yeah, for example, Star Creek Park, David Avenue Park, you could have playgrounds, tot lot, sport courts like basketball.
Sport courts, yes.
Combo sites, small spray parks, and some areas to kick a ball around, but definitely not for baseball or softball or
Okay, thank you.
regulation soccer field.
So none of them?
Oh,
That's correct. Yeah.
other-
Gillies Field to
Gillies
the
Field.
Gillies Field to the
Yeah.
east is going to be the designated sports
Thank
field
you.
facility. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so there's also question asked about the slope of bike routes in the Partington Creek plan. This shows all the Class 1 and Class 2 bike routes in the plan area, and this is based on the preliminary slope analysis and preliminary engineering. So you can see that the majority of the bike routes are under 7% grade, although there are some sections of Victoria, Upper Victoria, David, Burke Village Promenade, for example, that are over 9%. But again, that's at this point. As the neighborhood develops, there's more functional planning done. There may be reductions in that grade as those roads are designed and developed. Okay, so there was a lot of discussion about the need for effective solid waste management, especially we're trying to limit human bear encounters. Partington Creek area is black bear habitat right now, and there's going to be a lot of development in that area, so we've got to make sure that we have good solid waste management. So I just wanted to highlight that in the policies that we have identified the need for having bear-resistant garbage and recycling containers, but also having the secure space to store these containers. And that's enclosed, locked cabinets or compartments where bears can't get into, just qualifying what we mean by secure. And as a key implementation item, we're going to be bringing forward amendments to the zoning bylaw and other bylaws, such as the solid waste bylaw, to add detailed requirements about how to make this happen in single-family or multi-family developments. And staff will be reporting back to council and committee with those draft parameters in the future. Okay, so there was a question about, okay, planners like to plan. What about measuring, right? So fair enough. In the last section of the plan, 6.2, under monitoring, we have a series of key metrics that will be able to measure the implementation and the success of the plan. For example, the number and type of housing units, the amount and type of commercial space, the transportation mode share, how many people are walking, biking, taking transit, driving for non-work and work trips. And we'll also be evaluating the performance of the stormwater management system, for example. Okay, almost wrapping up here. I just want to highlight that we have the Servicing and Civic Facilities Assessment that we've developed as a companion document to the Partington Creek Plan. It's available online and at the back of council chambers today. And this summarizes the infrastructure improvements for plan, build out, the costs, and the funding sources for that. So based on council feedback that we received on the 27th, we don't propose any material changes to that document, although we have made some minor tweaks to the appendix maps where roads are noted as city-funded. We will clarify that that's through DCCs or development cost charges, and we've also made a correction to the conceptual local road network to make sure it's consistent with what's in the Partington Creek Plan. There was a minor mistake there. So those corrections will be brought forward with the assessment that we're bringing forward at adoption of the plan. Just a quick couple of clarifications to questions that came up when council and committee reviewed the servicing assessment. There is a question, why is there such a range in the projected dwelling unit count? Well, that's accounted for by the variation in possible build-out scenarios for the neighborhood center. There's a low, medium, high build-out scenario. And there's also a range of zones and densities in each land use designation in the plan area, so that accounts for that range. There's also a question if the townhouse household size used for those projections, 2.8 persons per unit, was high enough. We did compare that that is based on the citywide average townhouse size for the 2006 census. And also from the 2011 census, we see that 2.9 is the average townhouse household size citywide, and it's actually 2.6 in the Northeast. So at this point, we feel that 2.8 is a reasonable number to proceed with, and we'll be assessing that as the census numbers come out. Okay, wrapping the presentation up, the recommendation is to the council give second and third reading to the Partington Creek Neighborhood Plan Adoption Bylaw number 4391/2013. Thank you.
Okay. Do I have a speakers list on this one? Thank you. Okay. Are there any speakers to this item? Are there any speakers to this item? Please come forward.
Sandra Marsden, 3420 Highland Drive on Burke Mountain. I really enjoyed that presentation, but there were just a couple of things that I wanted to make sure that nobody forgets about. I noted on the presentation that the Partington Creek will respond to sloping conditions and talking about livability and sustainable mix of housing. 70% of the housing will be multifamily, compacted onto the lower reaches of Burke Mountain. And my thinking is that I would like to see, and just keep it in the foremind, a variety of the multifamily homes so that this does not become a marginalized, compacted community in 20, 30 years. Townhouses, we don't want to see banks and banks of rows of 10 units per bank on the townhouses. Monotonous. Duplexes, triplexes, multiplexes, some kind of variety, and also in the design of these townhomes. Boots on the ground, we've heard that statement before in response to Smiling Creek. So really, once you get your boots on the ground, you start chopping down the trees and start the building, then we really will see the slope and the steepness of the terrain. And keeping in mind that only 30% of this development will be single-family homes, and also that this is one of the last land bases for single-family homes. I hope things can reverse if needed, and perhaps more RS8, RS7, RS9 homes if the slope is not as steep as anticipated, and perhaps we can get a really good mix in there with the flexibility that this council has allotted to the planning department. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other speakers to this item? Please step forward. And you're next, sir.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. My name is Raymond Ostein, 666 Burrard. I work with Westbuild Holdings. I represent us as a landowner in the area, also as a member of the working group that has been involved with this for a number of years, and also as the UDI Liaison Committee. So I had quite a bit of involvement with this whole plan over the number of years, and I'd like to come up here with our support for this plan overall. There's certainly been ample room and ample time for consultation over the time of this plan, certainly in the different facets that I've been involved with, but the open houses, the openness of staff to hear the concerns of the citizens. Staff response to the feedback, I think, has been phenomenal, and we support that. Are there minor issues? Yes, of course there are. But I'm optimistic moving into the future that we can work with staff and council on the resolution of those, so I'm not overly concerned about those. We're certainly looking forward to moving forward with this plan and the development of this area. And from the number of comments that we're getting from our customers in the development of Smiling Creek, there's a lot of pent-up excitement from the consumer for this area, and it's absolutely a fantastic opportunity for the city. As you may be aware, you're a major landowner in that area, and this is a great opportunity for development, for reduction of your property taxes, for putting money in the bank. I think this is a great opportunity. And I'd just like to finish off again that we are fully in support of the Partington Neighbourhood Plan, and we look forward to moving forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Nostein. And sir. You're at bat, you're on deck.
Your Worship, Councillors, good evening. I'm here to voice my strong opposition for the park designation. I should say that I'm Dave Lostrop, and I live at 3665 Victoria Drive.
Thank you.
And I'm here to voice my strong opposition to the park designation at the back of my property for the Star Creek Park. And that's just all I wanted to say to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Karen Lostrop. I'm the co-owner of 3665 Victoria Drive. I'm here as well to voice my strong opposition against the park that's located on our property. I do believe there are other options. I know that there's other options, and I hope that you take the time to look at those other options with with Carl and his group tonight. I just wanted to, in closing, to just again, I strongly oppose the option that's indicated on the map tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I actually have a question for the last speaker. Could you come back?
Please come forward. Well, actually, we can't compel you to come forward.
No, that's right. Would you please come forward?
Okay.
I wonder if you could suggest to me what other options there might be.
Well, there's been 2 parcels of land that have been available. There are 2 parcels of land that are currently, I believe, back on the market for sale on Crouch. There were 2 on Pollard that were beside the school site, the designated school site. I don't know if those are available, but they were at one time. They were even on the market at the time that the OCP was being planned by the Planning Committee. There's probably other parcels of land that have just recently sold at the north end of Crouch. I think it's a 25-acre parcel of land. I think it's the one that I think there was a church that was designated or was looking at that parcel of land. There's that. I know that there's a grade of the slope of the land. However, I don't believe that it should eliminate the other parcels of land that are available just recently for sale.
Great, thank you.
Actually, while you're there, approximately, just can you describe the from your perspective, the shape of Star Creek Park as it's laid out? Is it flat? Is it sloped?
It's pretty flat. It's pretty flat.
I didn't mean shape. I meant topography, but yes.
It's a rectangle shape.
This is a rectangle shape, but it's relatively flat.
Yes. I do believe that the drawing up there, it shows that there's a trail. I do believe, Carl, that should be an extension. I think there's a mistake on that drawing, that it should join up to that park, the trail.
Yeah, what's not included there is the environmentally sensitive area. So that's actually between the park and the pedestrian connection.
See, that's new to me as well, because all along all the maps that I have looked at, they have joined up to that dotted line.
Yeah, that's just showing the park designation. The land use designation shows the park, the ESA, and the connection.
So right now it doesn't show all of my land being included in that, but all the maps that I have looked at have been included. So that was new tonight.
I understand the distinction is some of the land that you think is included is actually part of the SPIA or the...
That's correct, yeah.
And some of it is the dedicated park. So there's a park and then there's a SPIA. Can you also... I understand that adjustments were made to the shape of this park, partly in response to concerns by you and neighbors. Did that adjust the amount of your land that was used by the park?
It didn't affect me as much as it did the other 3 neighbors.
Okay.
Yeah, there hasn't been too much change with mine. I think it's maybe a 13.5 meter reduction.
Okay.
But I think the other 3 to the east, I guess the west, there have been little minor changes to that as well, more than mine.
Got it.
Yes, the southern boundary of the park was moved north 13.5 meters.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oops, Councillor Hodge.
Yeah, I'm a resident up on Burke Mountain and another neighborhood, but I went through the same questions as a resident, and when you're planning a community and you have to sort of look at a map and place schools and place parks, there is this concern about, you know, why land is chosen, and you know, certain residents may be designated as different land uses. I was just wondering maybe if staff could explain what the procedure is for acquiring park, because I think there is that misconception that people are going to be forced to off their property in 2 years because we want to put a park there. So maybe if you just outline what the process is and the expected timeline for parkland and how we buy it. Carl.
Yes, through the chair. Yeah, this is something that we take very seriously in terms of when we propose parkland for acquisition by the city. There's a process where the city undertakes an independent appraisal process. The land is valued at highest and best use based on adjacent land use. So in this case would be based on a townhouse land use designation. And once the plan is adopted, there is a process that is undertaken to acquire that land.
What is the highest land value use in that neighborhood? That would be multifamily, as proposed.
That's correct. To be
so
townhouse
we would be paying the top value, the same as if a neighbor next door were to sell to a developer, we'd be paying the same appraised value as what their property would be appraised at. Is that correct?
Yeah, the appraised value would be consistent with townhousing residential.
And what would the time frame be? How long would they have until they would have to sell it to become park?
I think that depends on the pace of development, and also as once the plan is adopted, there'll be a strategy put in place to acquire parkland. Again, this is on the eastern side of the plan area, an area that probably won't start developing for about a minimum of 5 years. Again, parkland acquisition may occur in advance of that, but there are other parcels that have been identified for park where acquisition may occur first, especially on the west side of the plan.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Please step forward.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I wasn't planning on saying anything, but I just needed to do it, and if I'm nervous, I do apologize for that. We've lived in the area on Victoria Drive since 1986. My husband built it. I'm all for a change. I'd like to congratulate the city for the amount of work they did. That being said, I'd like you guys all to realize that individually we're one person. As a group, we're a community. I have a very, very small water course on my property at 3519 Victoria Drive. I have spoken to numerous people in different capacities at the City Hall here. Everybody seems to be giving a different answer. My main question was, when it gets off of my property at 3519 Victoria, it goes into a culvert. So I'm asking, and I haven't got any official answer, is why can't we put the water course into a culvert? That's number one. In 1987, Mr. Mayor, I did bring this up once to you about another matter, but we had the covenant. There was a covenant on the land title that was removed. We have been babysitting that little waterway and did a beautiful job. It's got flowers, it's got, I mean, I don't think the city could have looked after it better, and you've got great horticulturists and everybody there, but all I'm saying is whatever's going to happen, please be fair to the individual small 1 acre person and not to hold us, I guess in a way, hostage for the development. I just want you guys to consider us as individuals, not as just a huge Westbuild or Mosaic, because they can do all the negotiations with you guys. We can't. So just treat the individual person fairly.
So you'd rather us not...
I'm sorry?
You'd rather us not sterilize your whole property because there's a small amount of water on it?
Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, your name and address for the record. I did need that. Thank you. Sorry, your name for the record? Sorry.
I'm sorry, I don't...
My apologies. I should have asked at the beginning, your name for the record.
My name is Valerie Knezovic.
Thank you very much.
At 3519 Victoria Drive.
Thank you. And I will let you know that the city did adopt riparian area regulations instead of the streamside protection regulations so that we could be more flexible about the land around small streams.
Be more flexible. I have an executive home that's worth quite a bit of money, and now I'm being told that half of my acre can't be built on because of the setbacks from the bank, and if something would happen to my house, I could build on the existing, but not. And I'm just saying that I feel that there should be a grandfather clause in there, like in many other jurisdictions, there's a grandfather clause. And it's not that I'm asking, at the end of my street, you guys put it into a culvert. So there's nothing wrong with going maybe 1 or 2 or 3 properties up from me and put it in there so that they're not being penalized because they have a water course.
You are speaking about something that is outside our jurisdiction.
I understand that it's through the fisheries.
Yes.
But a lot of times the input from the various municipalities would make a huge...
Not in our experience.
Not necessarily, but a positive reply from you guys would make a difference.
We're on your side on that one, but not in our experience. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Richard?
Councillor Nicholson, sorry.
Thank you. I actually wasn't finished with Star Creek Park. So Councillor Hodge asked about the likely timeline. But what I wanted to ask is how tough are we on that? What's the point at which we would say to somebody, we painted it green on the map, and now we're going to buy it from you. We'll be very fair about the selling price, but we want it today, thank you very much. Or is it a matter of when somebody decides they'd like to sell, we're there? Thank you.
Mr. Johansson.
In a general sense, I would say the latter.
So when you're ready,
Yes.
Pardon me, when they're ready, we're always ready. Thank you.
There you go. Thank you very much. Any other speakers to this item? We've already heard all we want to hear about Star Creek Park, so do you have anything other?
Well, I'm not going to bore you tonight, Your Worship and council members. I'm just going to keep it nice and short and sweet. My name is Nick Dominelli, and I'm the co-owner of property at 3675 Victoria Drive. And I'm here also to speak on behalf of some of the other neighboring people that couldn't attend tonight. Family of Pulio, that's 3669 Victoria Drive, and Mr. Steen at 1375 Polar Street couldn't attend, and also Judy Dryan at 3669 Victoria, Justino Pace at 3673 Victoria Drive. They all asked me to speak on their behalf, and basically what we're saying is just confirming again that we'd like to give our strong opposition to the park designation shown on our properties in the proposed Partington Creek neighborhood plan. So basically, we're not opposing a park. I mean, we're all for parks and everything. We're just trying to find a better location for it as we all purchased this property to work together on developing it ourselves and have a built-out future for it and be able to reap the benefits of having this property for a lengthy period of time and also subsidizing it since it was purchased. So I'm looking forward to, the whole Partington Creek plan moving forward, and just looking for your support to try and find a better location for the park, and possibly looking at, as the letter was submitted to you, coinciding with the school, as we have in the other previous plans. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers to this item? Any other speakers to this item?
My name's Peter Helm. I live at 3567 Victoria Drive, right along the south perimeter of Partington Creek. I just want to express my strong support in moving forward with this plan. I think a lot of work has been done on it. I think really the city can be proud of that work, the process that they followed, and really feel like they're diligently stewarding this significant chunk of the city. In particular, I just wanted to congratulate council and staff on a couple things. One is the public consultation process that was followed. I attended all the consultation events. I thought they were extremely well organized. There was knowledgeable staff on hand, creative displays. I thought information was communicated in a helpful manner. All my questions were answered. The second thing, too, was in terms of the Baycrest area there. I wanted to congratulate you on the flexible approach to zoning that was adopted in that area. I think that makes a lot of sense. It's an innovative way to deal with some of the complexities in the area. I think there will be the added benefit of having to look at fewer OCP amendments too once the reality and evolution of the neighborhoods takes place. And I just think we have a strong plan that will be an asset to the city. Thanks.
Thank you. Other speakers to this item? Any other speakers to this item? Third and final time, are there any other speakers to this item? I'll declare this item closed.
Moving to item 4, as item 3 was pulled from the agenda. Item 4 is a text amendment to the RM apartment zones and the C7 Transit Village commercial zones. Bylaw number 4393, 2013.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. This proposed zoning bylaw text amendment would amend the medium density apartment zones, RM2 and RM3, to allow density sharing on comprehensive development sites containing more than one lot, and to implement several housekeeping amendments to the RM apartment zones and the C7 Transit Village commercial zone. Specifically, the proposed amendments would remove surface parking requirements within the RM2, RM3, RM4, RM5, and 6 zones, which are no longer applicable, as all parking must be concealed. Eliminate the height limit in the RM6 zone to be consistent with the intent of the zone and the city's other higher density zones, the C4, C5, and C7. Introduce the same density sharing provisions to the RM2 and RM3 zones that are currently provided in the C4, C5, C7, and the RM4, 5, and 6 zones, and amend the current density sharing provisions of the RM4, 5, 6, and C7 zones to clarify that the provisions are only permitted on adjacent lots when developed comprehensively by the same developer as currently required in the C4 and C5 zones. Staff are recommending all final readings to rezoning bylaw number 4393. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I like the report, apart from the fact there are no pictures. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. Just through to Mr. McIntyre, who's disappeared. Perhaps Ms. Tiffany would know. The on-surface parking, that in no way displaces the loading zones, correct?
That is correct.
And we've still got 2 loading zones per site?
The loading provisions do not change at all. I believe that the loading provisions are 1 space per building up to, I forget what the number of units, but it's based upon the number of units in the proposed development.
Yeah. So there's room. And this takes into consideration the new parking. It doesn't change any of the parking, does it?
That is correct.
I don't like the parking you've got now, and so this doesn't make it any better, right?
Right.
Thank you.
But it doesn't make it any worse. Very good. Are there any speakers to this item? Any speakers to this item? Any speakers to this item? Last time? I'll declare this item and the public hearing closed. Yeah. We'll take a break. We'll convene in about 5 minutes with a council meeting.